Well, we're going to have some fun podcast listeners with Dr. Jim Small now, because we have a go woke or go broke. That's right. We have a go woke or go broke, and it's right down Dr. Small's alley of medicine. Namely, we have a trans swimmer.
Oh my.
Who has crushed the women's records. So there's a trans swimmer. This is all through the media, but this is from Breitbart, who crushes women's records, likely to win the NCAA titles. So transgender Penn swimmer Leah Thomas, a biological male, has been crushing women's records and will likely take home the title at the NCAA championships in March. Well, this particular swimmer, podcast listeners, has not just broken the record, but just crushed the record in college swimming. And of course, you have to ask yourself the question, well, how is that possible? It's a dude who's swimming in women's competition. So we have a quick clip from Tucker Carlson talking about this matter. It's worth listening to. Here it is.
At the University of Pennsylvania, a biological man has decided to say that he's a woman, he's a swimmer, and he's destroyed the women's swimming records, of course, because he's a man, actually. The swimmer goes by the name of Leah Thomas, competed for 3 years as a man before he decided to identify as a woman. And in a recent women's competition, he just won a 500-yard freestyle by a full 14 seconds. Now, if you swim or ever do a swim meet, 14 seconds? That's time enough to get a beer and come back. Like that, there's no 14-second differences between swimmers, but there are now. Thomas's closest rival in a longer freestyle race was 38 seconds behind. That's a different country.
So we just had Christopher Hopkins, our producer, say, I wonder how he did when he was competing against men. I mean, did he break the record then? And is that when he made his decision? So we're going to settle science, because this podcast is questioning science, and we have this go woke or go broke where a dude is crushing women's swimming records and is probably going to hold the new NCAA title. And so I'm just curious if the man is really a woman and Dr. Small here is an OBGYN. Have you ever seen a man give birth in the hospital when you're on call?
No,
it hasn't happened. Okay, that's interesting. I'm shocked. I'm shocked that hasn't happened yet. Because I feel like, at least the dude has to be able to do that. Then I have another question too, and that is, does he wear, because I guess he does, he wears the woman's one piece, because guys, when they go swimming, they wear the Speedo thing, right? Which, is humiliating enough, for most people. But if you're a woman, they get to wear the one piece. But the one piece, when you can picture it, it comes down very, very closely and tightly in the crotch. And I'm thinking, well, I mean, why doesn't anyone, Dr. Small, just look at that and say, it's a dude? I mean, right? It's just, this is a dude.
Well, I'm reminded through this entire conversation, I can't help but get the child's book, The Emperor's New Clothes, out of my head. And everyone knows this story about the emperor who was so vain that he needed to have the finest garments known. And so a charlatan came into town and convinced the emperor that he was the finest seamstress and finest cloth maker in the world. And he spun all these wonderful cloths, but in fact, these were non-existent. But the servants and population of the emperor were so afraid of the emperor and knew of his vanity that they continued to espouse at how wonderful the emperor looked. And slowly over time, the charlatan convinced the emperor that he was wearing the finest manufactured clothes in the world, which were absolutely nothing, right? And then the emperor wants to parade and goes down through the city on a horseback in the finest clothes that could ever be manufactured, and the population is applauding, knowing full well what the emperor was actually wearing. And the small child points out, look, Mommy, the emperor has no clothes. And the emperor, for that one moment,
look, Mommy, the emperor's an empress. Yeah.
realizes that it's all fake, it's all false. And this whole concept of, a man can be a woman, well, that's first of all foolishness. it cannot be. You can identify, I guess, as a rock if you want to.
But you're an OBGYN. Have you ever seen a man that somehow became a woman?
No, and that's foolishness. And that goes against the very foundations on which we exist in humanity. But this idea of someone competing as something else is something that has to be decided as a society. And I think that's where we're finding ourselves when we have all this crossover, because people are trying to say this is science. Well, it's foolish. It's not science. This is just personal opinion. And that's where the difference between that scientific...
Don't question science, doctor.
No.
Come on, don't question science.
Okay, I'll just be quiet from now.
You can't question science.
I'll stop talking.
Even though that's the name of this podcast, you can't question it because, this is a dude.
Or question the fact, is it even science? That's right. I mean, is this even science? Because, that's the whole point. What is science? Science is asking a question and doing an investigation to determine the answer to that question. And I guarantee you, if they did an investigation, is this guy a woman, they would find out he was not.
Imagine that. So in a statement this past April, National Collegiate Athletic Association, the NCAA, announced its unequivocal support for the transgender community and expressed no misgivings about the prospect of biological men outcompeting women in their given sport. Quote, the NCAA Board of Governors firmly and unequivocally supports the opportunity for transgender student athletes to compete in college sports. The commitment is grounded on our values of inclusion and fair competition, the NCAA said. Talk about questioning the science.
Well, the NCAA fought for so many years to get women's sports into the system, right?
Yes.
And now they're watering it down. And under the auspices of this absolutely non-scientific, there's no question here, because there's no question that exists. It is not something that's rational. And no matter how you slice this bread, you're still going to have bread. And the point is here, you've got two opposite concerns. We're talking about politics entering into science, and now we've got science entering under the guise of politics, and that somehow this is scientific, that this guy wants to be a female, and therefore he can take some testosterone suppressing medication and somehow turn himself into a female and compete, when he's just going to have natural ability that's going to be superior to the average female. They were horse racing. Remember the horse racing the other day? They were worried about that Kentucky Derby winner getting steroids, and they finally found out that it was cream and not a shot of steroids that the horse was getting, and the horse keeled over and died of a heart attack.
Oh, I thought it was a COVID shot.
Oh, it could have been. They're probably giving COVID shots now. They're giving them to zoo animals. I don't know. They're giving them to horses now.